Hello and welcome. I'm Patrick Curtis, your host and chief monkey, and this is the Wall Street Oasis podcast. Join me as I talk to some of the community's most successful and inspirational members to gain valuable insight into different career paths and life in general. Let's get to it. Member WSO Mentor 1022 reveals how, even with a low GPA from a non-target school, he ended up at an investment bank just a few years after graduating. How he successfully interviewed for a crucial internship while having the flu, the most important reason he was able to land multiple offers, and how much he's getting paid now. Enjoy. WSO Mentor 1022, thanks so much for joining the Wall Street Oasis podcast.
Yeah, hey, good to talk to you, Patrick.
It'd be great to just give the listeners a quick summary of your background.
Yeah, brief summary. I went to a non-target for undergrad. I had an okay GPA, some would call low, definitely low for banking, probably around a 3.0 to a 3.2. I can't exactly remember. It's been a little bit. Spent about a year and a half in kind of a corporate strategy / business development role. Focused a lot on financial valuation, and I used that as kind of a platform to break into investment banking, which I did after about a year and a half there.
Great. And when you were in undergrad, when did you kind of know that you wanted to break into banking? Was it something you knew freshman year, you didn't realize till junior year? And then when did you realize this is going to be really tough from a non-target?
Yeah, it was definitely later in the process for me that I realized I wanted to go into banking. So the first interest I actually had in finance, I kind of got through Wall Street Oasis, ironically. Ended up kind of working with them a little bit in their internship program. And then I kind of found more about banking and said, this is something I'm interested in pursuing. Junior year summer, I had kind of a strategy / consulting internship at a pretty unknown firm, but definitely late to the game. I realized I wanted to get into banking.
So like junior, senior year kind of thing?
Yeah, about then.
And so when did you pivot to looking outside of banking, when you realized you weren't getting enough interviews, or did you land some interviews? Can you talk about that process, on campus, or what you did to land any interviews, if you did get any?
Yeah, so unfortunately, my school doesn't have that many people in banking. Definitely what I would call a complete non-target. And I just wasn't getting interviews directly out of undergrad, at all. So I knew I had to pivot into something that would be somewhat applicable. So if I ever got the chance, I could maybe lateral over.
Great. And so how did you think about that? And how did you look at those opportunities in terms of, was it something that was on campus, or did you have to go make your own opportunities?
I actually got contacted by a recruiter for this role. Ironically, she thought I still lived in the city that I interned in. So I guess it worked out really easily. But the way I kind of went about other jobs is just applying through LinkedIn, applying through company websites, and finding opportunities that way.
How was your hit rate on those?
I don't know if I have an approximation for you. I definitely spent, an entire semester before I graduated just spamming resumes as much as I could and trying to get footing on any job opportunity that I could find that was remotely applicable.
Do you feel like when you did start landing interviews, or how many interviews did you land, I guess, were you looking for, is this during the internships? Let's start junior year, kind of when you're potentially looking for internships after the summer. Is that when you kind of started the aggressive, as you call it, job spamming or, resume spamming out, or was it earlier?
I would probably say for finding an internship in the summer, it was, I didn't really realize the importance of junior year summer internships until probably October, maybe November. So that's pretty late for banking. I realized that wasn't necessarily the only thing I could do, and I wanted to explore other things as well. Just ended up applying on LinkedIn to a consulting / strategy role like I talked about, and got an interview. It was actually the worst interview I did in the final round. I had the flu that day.
Oh, rough.
And I thought I performed horribly. And somehow I ended up getting lucky, I guess. But that was kind of the approach there.
I kind of want to unpack that a little bit. That you think you had the flu, you ended up getting the job. Do you feel like it was just that maybe it wasn't that specific job wasn't as competitive, or do you feel like maybe the other ones where you performed better were just more competitive? Like what are those other jobs you had interviews at? Were they similar kind of consulting strategy firms?
One was actually in asset management.
Mm-hmm.
I got an offer there and turned it down in favor of the consulting slash strategy. And the other was at, I won't say the specific firm, but it was for kind of a financial advisory
Yep.
program.
Yep.
Wasn't too interested in that at the time, but I would say it was pretty competitive. I had about 10 other summer interns with me, and they all went to pretty good schools such as Babson, Boston College, Indiana, pretty good business school there as well, and other kind of bigger name schools than mine, I guess.
And you literally got that interview just through like a LinkedIn submission, or you found it through there?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And then you landed it. And so how many people do you think went through that process, and how many interns landed this?
Well, it's actually really funny. I talked to there was a younger girl who did the recruiting, and I talked to her after and said, wow, I thought, I did horribly on this. And she said that they interviewed about 100 people for the final, just over the course of different days. And then they ended up extending 12 offers.
That's insane. So you're just a really good interviewer then. You connect with people.
I guess. I was not feeling well that day. I was sweating the entire time. It looked, from my perspective, it looked terrible. But I guess they just saw something in me that day. I don't know. I can't explain it.
So how do you prepare? Is it something where did you prepare for that interview? Or if you didn't, is it something where you just come off as more relaxed, do you think, than the average candidate? I just love to unpack that a little bit, because for some people, interviews are extremely scary. Other people, they feel like they're really good, but they keep striking out. Other people know that they're bad. So I'd like to just unpack that a little bit, because the fact that you had 2 offers with relatively low GPA from a non-target at a relatively competitive internship kind of intrigues me. So I'd like to know, do you feel like you're just naturally more calm? Do you just connect with people well, or is it something where you just felt like you got lucky?
Yeah, I'm definitely a lot of people have described me as a people's person, and I always feel really calm meeting new people. Even, an interview setting can be stressful, but if you think about it in the way that it's stressful, you're not going to perform as well, in my opinion. I think you just have to view it as meeting people and trying to speak intelligently and being genuine to yourself and who you are and what you know and what you don't know. Specifically for the consulting slash strategy one, I actually prepared using the Wall Street Oasis. I think it's the consulting course, the consulting prep course, and that really helped me that day because there was a case. But other than that, just coming off genuine is something I think I'm pretty good at, and I've been told I'm a good speaker as well. So
interesting, yeah. So you had a little bit you did do some prep, you did put in some work, so you were prepped for the case. You kind of checked that box, but to me, I feel like the real takeaway here is just calm down. Like if you can calm yourself and be just, connect with them on a personal level, I think so many people miss that boat, and just come across as most.
People also miss being present in the moment, and they kind of think of, maybe a super day and maybe a final round as, oh, I have to get this, otherwise I'm just done for the summer and nothing's going to work out forever.
Right.
I think that being kind of present in the moment is a big key to interviewing, and just being calm when you're there. It's not life or death.
Yeah, being in the moment, not having the fatalistic attitude of that this is so important for my career and I must land this internship. It's more of like, well, I'm just getting to know these people and let's see what happens. Maybe it's not the right place for me, and almost like you're interviewing them at the same time, right? Where you have, at least having that perspective, I think for me helped. Whereas it was, even though if I didn't have the leverage, I would almost pretend like I had the leverage, right? In terms of interviewing. So that's great. So, okay. So that's really, I think, insightful for the listeners. So you ended up getting that offer. You turned down another offer that you had. So you not only landed one at a relatively late kind of cycle, but you landed 2 potential offers. You took this consulting job because you felt like maybe it was more relevant, more interesting work. And then, tell me a little bit about that, and then kind of how you came into senior year.
Yeah, it was a really fun program. I think I didn't really want to focus on it long term, and I definitely knew I wanted to go into something more transactions focused, so something more like banking. They gave us all rankings for the internship program. I actually ranked second in the class out of 12, and I got a return offer, so that was exciting.
Wow.
I knew I could kind of leverage that return offer to other things and see what else was out there for me. Like I said, I ended up getting contacted by a recruiter for the role that I took out of undergrad. Told them I had a return offer and this is what I was wanting to do. Got another interesting job opportunity in a city I didn't really like in asset management, so I turned that down in favor of the role that I took.
Got it. And then in terms of like how well you did at the internship, what do you think, was there any piece of advice you could have for people that are kind of starting their internship? Why do you think you stood out? Why do you think you were ranked number 2 out of 12?
I wish I had a better answer for you, other than I think I do a really good job of just connecting with people and delivering quality work as opposed to kind of a quantity. So a big part of this was, for the first month, we're just going through kind of basic training, I guess you would call it, and doing a lot of presentations to senior management at the firm, just so if they wanted to stick us in front of clients, they knew who could do it and who couldn't.
Yeah.
And I think just kind of having that confidence to walk in a room and be able to present something to anybody, whether, it's the CEO of a Fortune 500 or if it's just your direct manager. I think you kind of have to have the same mindset going into each presentation.
Where do you think that confidence comes from? Like, did you just grow up with that? Do you feel like there's a reason you're like that?
I think I just don't view everything as, if this doesn't work out this way, it's not, if something doesn't work out, then it's not meant to be, I guess, is my attitude towards it. And I just go into every situation knowing that if I'm genuine to myself and I speak about what I know, and if someone asks me a question I don't, I can always look it up later, or I can always figure it out after for them, instead of that. Some people panic under pressure, and I don't think I ever have.
Fair enough. So you had the return offer. You started kind of, you knew you had that. Was that exploding? How much time did you have to shop that offer? Was it something where like you had to scramble fast?
Yeah, I had approximately 3 months, so I had time.
Oh, you had a lot of time. That was a bad move on their part. No, but okay. So you had some time. So you started kind of talking to other people, to other companies, and you had this one other offer. Wasn't excited about the city, but you found this your current role. And yeah, tell me a little bit more about that. And kind of, you said you were looking for more transaction type focus. Was that still with the thought that you wanted to get to investment banking eventually?
Yeah, it was.
Okay. And so tell me a little bit about kind of your job, your day-to-day, day in the life kind of what you're doing at your current role.
Current role being which one? The one I left, or the
not the one you just left, the one prior to that.
Okay.
So your transition to your first full-time role out of school, that one.
Yeah. So I think the first 3 months of any, job that you step into at undergrad can be a little bit, just learning, and it can be a little daunting. But after that, short period, I was doing a lot of investment analysis and a lot of presentation to our internal management team about doing, say, acquisitions, or kind of, I guess you would call it, growth projects in strategic territories. Just making capital investments into very small companies or into existing companies that we thought would better get our brand to the next level, I guess you would say.
So you're in corp dev, basically, for a medium-sized company.
Without giving out.
No, that's fine. But basically, it's a corp dev role where you're looking at like strategics. You're looking at you're doing kind of an M&A function, but also a little bit on the strategy side, looking at new markets and stuff like that.
Right, at a very small scale, in a very specific,
very niche industry. Yeah, which we will not share because it'll be too obvious. Yeah, that's fair. And then, okay, so you're doing that. How long were you there? And kind of tell me about the transition of when you felt like, okay, now is the right time to start, looking for those banking jobs again, and you're ready. And how did you go about that? Was it through recruiters? Was it your own networking? I'd love to hear about that transition.
Yeah, it was a little bit of both. So I actually took that role because of the director who was there at the time. Unfortunately, he or she moved on from the company at about my, I want to say, 10-month mark. I kind of got the sense that that was the time for me to go too, just because I had grown a lot and I had kind of maxed out my learning opportunities there. And because it was such a niche industry, I knew that, the growth wouldn't continue as fast as I wanted it to necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
I had been getting a few interviews at banks through recruiters contacting me, through just applying for lateral opportunities as I saw them opening, from reaching out to people in the city that I'm in and, hearing about their experience and asking if they know about any opportunities. The one I ended up getting an offer from, I actually had an alumni call me asking for advice on what I was doing at the job out of undergraduate that I was in.
Uh-huh.
And he ended up contacting me and saying, hey, these guys are looking to fill a spot. I know you're interested in switching in. Give them a call. So it was definitely the one I ended up getting, was definitely through networking.
Very cool. And so specifically, once you did get in touch with once you knew that opening was there, you obviously reached out. And then can you tell me a little bit about that process? Was there any pushback, the fact that you didn't have traditional banking experience coming in as a lateral? Like, were they looking, I know a lot of banks traditionally are looking for like somebody who has a year under their belt of actual banking. Was that a big sticking point, or were they willing to consider you kind of with just the corp dev experience?
I would say that it was something I had to address, but it's definitely something that you can't overcome because the work is pretty similar. And when you're doing kind of, I would say that internal investment presentations are pretty similar to anything that you'd really be doing in banking, or it's just the same thought process and style behind everything. I was willing to submit sample work for them and show them that I had I had the skills necessary to really do well at this job.
Interesting. So you were submitting stuff you had done at your corp dev role to demonstrate that, hey, look, I can do a pitch book. I can do the financial analysis needed. You had that kind of prepped and ready to go in a package.
Yeah. And they actually had me do an Excel test as well. I think that was a part of their recruiting in general, but maybe it was specific to me. I'm not sure.
They're like, give this kid an Excel test. We don't trust it that he knows what he's doing. That's interesting. No, so you had that did you have that package kind of prepared beforehand, or who kind of gave you that advice? Was that something you knew you kind of needed to do to make yourself competitive, or how did you know when to send that? Was it something you kind of included on your initial outreach, or can you talk a little bit about that in terms of how you approached it?
Yeah. When I was networking with the banker, I think he's at a bulge bracket now, but I was kind of talking to him and I said, what am I doing wrong? What am I missing? He said, maybe you should offer sample work product to people after your first interview. So every interview that I got after the initial phone call, I'd say, if you guys want to see any sample work products, I'm more than happy to submit over a packet of things I've done in the past that really kind of showcases the skills I have.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. I really think that's big, especially coming from I'd call a disadvantaged situation like yours, where you don't have the traditional like lateral banking, either you don't have the pedigree and you don't have the experience, the direct experience. So you're really going up a big hill, right? And so if you can just demonstrate through your work, you're obviously great at interviewing once you get in the room, right? So they may like you, but then all of a sudden they like a couple other kids too who have that stamp. So I think to get yourself back up to, a competitive level, I think doing that was really smart.
Yeah, and that definitely helped me later, because I didn't realize it I didn't get that advice until a little bit later on. But I did interview for, I had a few final rounds at other lateral opportunities that I found out ended up going to people with a year of IB experience already.
Yeah, that's why I'm surprised. That's what surprised me about your move, is you were able to make it. And I think it makes sense that you're naturally a good interviewer, that you even got in the door, right? Or the networking and all that stuff, and you're a people person. But the fact that you actually got the offer, it makes sense that you were doing something a little extra. So that's great to hear.
Yeah.
So anything else, so in terms of what you're doing now, is it what you expected? Is it, are you working 100-hour weeks? What's the lifestyle like? And then, if you could share anything in terms of range of pay, like how was the range, like what was the range like at your first job? And you can be kind of as broad or as specific as you want. And then how's it looking now?
Yeah, I guess I'll start with just the range of salaries. First place base was around, I'd say approximately 60, bonus was around 10 to 15% of that. Definitely not investment banking money. I would say now I'm at a pretty small boutique. The range is pretty broad, between 100 and 150, depending on performance, obviously, and how much they like me and how well I do. I'd say that a boutique was probably the right choice for me personally. Hours aren't too bad, probably 60 to 80.
Okay.
And for me, it's a lot about growth opportunity. And when you're one of the only two analysts in the entire bank, you have that opportunity and that potential to really get in the room and be making good analysis and to really be involved with management teams as to, maybe just creating pitch books.
And so you guys are doing live, there's enough live deals there. Is there anything you looked toward like before you accepted the offer, or were you just like, hey, this is banking, I'm in? Or was it like, hey, let me do my diligence, make sure these guys have actual live deals? What was the thought process?
I did some diligence. I probably could have been more diligent,
Yeah.
But I made sure that the deal flow was there over the last, I looked for 3 years and made sure that they had good deal flow, which they did. And then I actually reached out to one of the analysts who had left the bank previously and heard about his experience, and he spoke very highly of it.
Yeah, that's a great move. I think always talking to people who left and trying to figure out why, and letting them know it's in full confidence to give them to try and get the true honest reason is a really, really useful exercise before kind of signing on the dotted line. Cool. And anything else you want to share? Yeah, anything else you want to share? I think it's very rare to hear someone from your background, like the non-target, relatively low GPA, like you said, kind of come into banking through this kind of side, what I'd consider almost like a side door. But it was really smart of you to kind of get in a role, I think, that had the transaction type work, to be able to kind of get that on your CV. But yeah, do you want to talk anything else you want to share with the listeners?
It's actually something I just found out about a week or two ago from who I would consider my MBA coach. He's just a personal friend of mine. But he kept telling me about just how what I've done over the last, 3 or 4 years is all about building positive momentum and keeping the ball rolling instead of, taking huge steps back or doing something that you don't love or, kind of losing sight of that end goal. And that's going to be a big part of me applying to business schools, is showcasing that I've really just I laid out what I wanted, and I've always built that momentum to get to where I wanted to go. And that's kind of something that I think a lot of people don't think about when they get out of school and they're about a year into their career. It's, where can I go that's going to get me the most money, or where can I go that, it has a good brand name? It's just about kind of building that positive momentum and driving forward, I guess is the term I would use.
Yeah, and it's almost like you really want to focus not on the paycheck right out of school, but really about the experience, so that making sure you're building the right skill sets to eventually land in the role that you're targeting. I think it's tough. It's tough to know when you're that young too. Is this something I want to do long term? So like, in a couple of years, you may also be like, I'm not sure I want to be an IB, but at least you have some transferable skill sets. And maybe you'll be a banker for life. Who knows? BFL. But that maybe I'll have you back on in 5 years and we can chat about that. See where you're at that point. Cool, man. Well, thanks so much. And thanks to you, my listeners at Wall Street Oasis. If you have any suggestions whatsoever, please don't hesitate to send them my way, Patrick@wallstreetoasis.com. Until next time.